Hi, I'm Everett Gosser, the book editor for Word of Flame Press at Pentecostal Publishing House. I'm here with Dr. Eugene Wilson, author of Rhythm, Getting Things Done When You Have Too Much to Do, his latest book. He's published 5 Word of Flame Press books over the last few years, and we're going to talk today about his latest book. Dr. Wilson comes to us with some 30 years of pastoral experience, maybe 30 plus, I would say, pastoral experience. He teaches at Urshan College and Urshan Graduate School. He's also the founder of Equipping Leaders, consulting and coaching ministry endeavor. To get things started, Dr. Wilson, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and what you like to do in ministry?
Okay, so I'm born and raised in a minister's home. My father has been my pastor all my life, and between my wife and I, I need to back up and tell you a little bit about my wife. As you know, my wife is the daughter of Simeon Young, Sr., who was the editor of the Pentecostal Herald at the time, and so there's a little bit of insight to a little bit of my writing. I'll come back to that in a minute, but between my wife and I, we have 27 pastors in our extended family. So this is basically all I've ever known, and I love the ministry. And so my wife and I have been married 28 years now. We have 2 children. One is a student at Urshan College, and the other one is finishing his bachelor's degree at Regent University and is planning on enrolling at UGST. So this is our life, man. We love leadership. We love counseling, and with my wife's getting her doctorate in counseling right now. My daughter is studying psychology. So everything is geared to help leaders and help pastors. So this is our life.
So why leadership? You're becoming the preeminent author in UPCI on leadership. You've written 5 books. Many of them have some element that is focused on leadership. This isn't specifically a leadership book, but can you talk about your interest in equipping leaders?
Yes. So first of all, thank you in what you said, and then at the same time, it brings me to tears too, because there's a background of my love for leadership, and I don't feel like I've arrived. I feel like there's so many people that I can learn from and have learned from, but I do love to write. I love to put it into words and hopefully help other people with it. But it all goes back to being a home missions pastor. I didn't have the status of home missions, but for all practical purposes, I was a home missions pastor. And I came home on a Sunday afternoon. And of course, I said earlier, I was raised in a pastor's home. And I was taught that you don't work on Sunday, and especially with my family, you don't work on Sunday. And so I came home and I decided to work one day. We had services at 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock at the time, and it was in the afternoon. And I decided to mow the yard, and I mowed the yard that day primarily because I was frustrated. I was upset at everybody in the church. No one had the vision like I had. No one had the work ethic like I had. No one cared about it like I care. I had the Elijah syndrome, and it was strong that day. So I'm mowing the yard, and it's about 1.5 acres. It took me about close to 2 hours to mow the yard, and I push mowing. I didn't have a riding lawnmower at the time, and I push mowing this yard. It's out in the country, and there's one tree in the yard. It's in the center of the yard, and I'm pushing the mower, and I'm having this conversation with the Lord, and I'm complaining. And let me back up. I don't think it was really a conversation. It was definitely one-sided because I wasn't expecting God to speak. I was just complaining. I said, I don't have to be here. I don't have to be doing this. I could be somewhere and be full-time. I don't have to be here putting up with this. And I'm just pouring this all out. My feelings, just pouring them out. And I said, all I want to do is train leaders. And I think it was the first time I'd ever verbalized that. And I said it out of frustration of what I was dealing with. And the Lord spoke to me. I wasn't expecting to speak. And he said, well, train them. And when he said that, I thought, yeah, right. I mean, you would think that would say, yes, Lord, thy servant heareth, I will do as thou hast spoken to me. And instead, I said, yeah, right. And I'm still frustrated. And I said, yeah, right, like, we have like 4 or 5 people to train as leaders. And the Lord spoke to me so clearly. He said, if you'll be faithful with a little, I will give you much. And that moment changed my life. It literally changed my life. And I feel even right now, I'm starting to, I remember that moment so distinctly. And I began to weep, but I almost hit the tree. The one tree that was in the yard that I was headed to when this conversation took place. And last August, I was in the Philippines with Terry Schock and a few others, and he made a statement that he wanted to train leaders. And he said, I'm here today with 250 leaders of the largest Oneness Apostolic organization in the world in the Philippines. And when he said that, the Lord just spoke to me. He said, I told you, if you be faithful with a little, I will give you much. And so here I am speaking at that event. At the time when the Lord spoke that to me some 18 years ago, I didn't know at the time that I would go back and pursue my master's and my doctorate and write the books I've written. But I have such a desire to, and I feel like a calling to turn around and help others and help leaders. And much from my experience as a kid and growing up in a pastor's home, being around all my relatives that were in the ministry, loving the ministry, being a part of that myself in home mission settings, and being a bivocational pastor and trying to, how do I handle all of my responsibilities, and then how do I move forward on the things that are important to me when I've got to take care of all these things, and then, later becoming full-time in ministry and being on staff and at a church and as a family pastor and knowing, well, I've got to take care of all these things and yet wanting to pursue my education, and how do I balance all of that? So the things I write about, yes, they're all two leaders, and they all stem from that background of being in the ministry and everything I just said. It's just, it all flows from that.
Well, when it comes to this book, Rhythm, Getting Things Done When You Have Too Much to Do, how did this book come into being? Where did this genesis of this idea come from? Or tell me a little bit about the background of the book.
Yes, sir. So a little bit of rhythm came out of rotativity. So rotativity was, the word that I made up, and I actually started off writing that book with the title, working title, Accelerate. Accelerate, move towards what God has called you to do, fulfill your dream, your vision, the things that God has placed in your heart. And as I was writing Accelerate, I began to think about the guy who is like the rat that's on the wheel and it's spinning, but it's not going anywhere. And so many times in life, we think that to be productive is to be busy. Just if I can be busy, then I'm being productive. And that's not so. You can be very, very busy and just be spinning, not going anywhere. So that's why I wrote the rotativity. The word, actually, as I was writing one day, I thought about the spinning of the wheel and the rodent. And I thought, wait a minute, rodent, productivity, I'm just playing around with the words, and all of a sudden, rotativity, I kind of chuckled. And I thought I just made up a word. And then I ran it by a couple of friends, my wife, and they were like, yeah, I kind of like that. So maybe someday it'll make it to Webster's. That would be really cool. And so when I was writing rotativity, I began looking at my own life and thinking, man, there's so many things I want to accomplish, so many things that I would like to do, and how can I do that in the midst of all these things that are going on? And so I'm reading like Cal Newport, the deep work, and he says that if you are, and this is part of, it's in Rhythm, I refer to that, and also in rotativity, he says that if you are, Cal Newport, and the other one was the 4 dysfunctions of, or the 4 disciplines of execution. And those books really impacted me a lot. And one of them said that if you're focusing on 2 to 3 things, you're likely to accomplish 2 to 3. If you focus on 4 to 10 things, you will likely only accomplish 1. If you focus on 11 to 20 things, you will likely accomplish 0. So the key is not more stuff. The key is great focus, narrowing things down. So as I'm reading these things, going through productivity, I thought, man, I wonder if I could take my life to an even higher level of being productive with what time I have. Not being overly busy, but just being productive with the time that I have. And I look at people, I mean, I can start giving names, and Brother Bernard would be one of those that I admire greatly, who you know, he reads so many books, you know, and his travels and his, I mean, the list goes on and on. So how does a person, you know, maintain good health, good relationships with their spouse, their children? How do you do these things? How do you do that? And there are many others that I've looked at and I've admired. So I thought, you know what, I think I can do better. So I started going back, began reading different academic articles and following productivity gurus and then looking at just people that I had conversations in the past that I consider to be highly productive, and I began to take from all of them, and I thought, I'm going to see if I can increase, and I did. I'm very, very thankful for that. Now, I got to be honest, you know, I don't live what I write 100%, and I believe that I actually allude to that in the book, and I don't think that's the goal. I think the goal is to have a target and know that when I get off kilter, or just life, the seasons of life, things that travel can mess things up. You know, how do I handle that? Well, I have a target to get me back on track, and so I would say I run probably 85% of what I write about. Maybe a little lower at times, definitely higher at times. But
you talk about busy. I mean, busyness. If there's anything that defines us as a culture in the last 10, 15, 25 years, going back, I don't know how long, we're busy. I'm too busy. No, I can't do that. I'm too busy. No, I can't take anything else. I'm too busy. So I think that really your books are extremely needed and will be helpful to everybody who reads it. I just want to read something that you have in a section called Set Aside Time to Brainstorm. You write in the first person, my life is busy. Sometimes the busyness is too much and I have to adjust accordingly. Usually these situations occur because of a failure on my part to say no. Yes, I am still learning to say no.
wow.
This is, you talk in another section about the importance of saying no, and I think there's pros and cons from my experience. There are certain people you can't say no to, and certain tasks that you it's really not in your best interest to say no to, but there are certainly things that you get asked to do, and when you look at your schedule, that's not really something that I can do. And I think that's important, and I like that you bring that up. I say all that to ask you this. As you are challenged sometimes with saying no, is there anything else that you're challenged by in trying to, you know, you say you live 85% of the things that are in this book. What else is a challenge for you when you think about you're not able to get things done? What's one of your biggest challenges outside of saying no?
Wow. So you don't know this, but last night I actually spoke twice. We have a 6 o'clock service and a 7:30, and my title was Say No to Say Yes. And so I talked about everything you just said, and oh wow. So I read a statement, and actually I put this in a book, and last night as I was preparing for the Bible study last night, I came across the statement, and I included it. It's such a powerful statement. Stephen Covey says that, and I'm going to put this in my paraphrase it right now, but one of the greatest ways to say no is to have a bigger burning yes inside of you. Something that's bigger, a big yes. And so, you know, I have a big yes, a huge yes. The challenge, other than what you alluded to, because there are times you're just asked, but the challenge is that you don't always get to spend the majority of your time on the thing that you want to say yes to. You know, you've got to maintain so many things, not always just something someone else is asking you to do, but just life itself. And the challenge is that you can become so easily distracted by all these other things, not from the standpoint that you lose sight, at least for me. I never lose sight of the vision. It's every day. I mean, the burning yes inside of me is huge. It's frustration of knowing that I got to keep waiting. I got to wait a little longer to be able to put the time in that I want to, because I got to take care of all these things. I've got to wait to, and that wait, I think, is one of the biggest things to me. So I ended last night, and I felt like the Lord really dealt with me about this. Ended last night with the scripture that says that they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall, mount up with wings as eagles. And I went into a little bit of that. I didn't spend a lot of time, but just a little bit. And the point that I really wanted to make last night is that do not be frustrated in your waiting, because it will change. You'll get there. And so I think that coming back to rhythm helps a lot, because it gives you some practical insights of how to get the most out of your day. Practical insights to get rid of distractions. I mean, I was losing my ability to focus because I had allowed myself to set up notifications on my phone and my computer, so every email was making a sound, and text messages were making a sound, and it was just on and on. So I had to stop that. And then I'm the kind of guy, if I see that I've got emails I need to, that's in my box, I want to clear them all out. It's like they've got to be clean, and then I can focus. But I've learned that doesn't really work that way. I never get everything off the normal to-do list, never get all these things, and never really get past all of that. So I have to carve out time to focus on what's really important. That I can live with. I've already learned how to do that. And I'm 50, I don't want to say it, I'm 54 years old, and I have so many goals and so many things that the Lord has put in my heart, and I feel as though that I'm still waiting to get to that place to be able to really spend my time with it. And I don't have all those answers to that, other than to say that be not weary in well-doing. And as I say those things, and as I was saying this last night, I'm thinking of my brother, who's a pastor, but he's a bivocational pastor. He runs a certain division in the company. He's busy. He doesn't have all the time he wants to spend with the church. I think about my father, who for the formative years of my life was a bivocational pastor. I think about my uncle, who planted, and my aunt and uncle planted 6, 7 churches in Georgia, who worked his entire life as he planted these churches. And my understanding is that the large majority of our constituency of the United Pentecostal Church, and the ministers are bivocational ministers. I think about the men in our church at home who are assistants and youth leaders, and the list goes on and on, who are bivocational ministers. And so I know that within us is this burning desire to say yes, to invest in the things that really are important to us. And yet it seems as though that there's this space, seasons that seem to be going a lot longer than a normal 4-month season, or 3-month season, I should say, in which that we are waiting. And I think that's an area that I'm trying to, and they show up in a book at some point, but I'm trying to work my way through that.
Did you have a specific person in mind, or conversely, who would be your ideal reader for this book?
So that's a great question. So my personal goals in life and what I feel called to do is to help church leaders to grow, to equip them to be everything that God wants them to be, and give them the tools to equip others. I feel like my calling, fivefold ministry calling, is to equip people for their work of ministry. So I feel as though that I'm called to be an equipper. The other thing I want to do is that I see a lot of Christians, apostolics, are in the business world, and it seems as though that there's too much of of a gulf between what they do in the business world and the church. And you have an individual who highly skilled, brings so much to the table, and yet they have to jump through the hoop to be an usher when they could be utilizing their skill set for the church. The challenge many times is that they don't understand working with volunteers. And there's a difference between, you know, like, I'm going to fire you if you don't do your job, and then working with a volunteer. And that's just one of many other challenges I can talk about. But I've always wanted to kind of do something to bridge this gulf between the two. And so rhythm is, rotativity actually, and then rhythm is my first attempts to begin writing things and producing material to help begin to bridge the gulf between the two.
Well, I appreciate your taking the time to speak with me today, and I believe that if you buy this book, Rhythm, by Dr. Eugene Wilson, available at pentecostalpublishing.com, it's going to make a world of difference in your life. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.